Welcome back. It's my pleasure to introduce a company whose work in development of practitioner and patient digital tools is quickly becoming unparalleled. That company is MINDCURE, and its CEO is Kelsey Ramsden. Kelsey, it is really great to meet you, and we are delighted to hear about your work.
It's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me. Excited to talk about our digital therapeutics and our drug development. So should we just kick it off?
Let's do it.
Great. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for spending your time getting to know MINDCURE myself. I'll lead into this just giving you a sense of orientation. We're going to spend about 10 minutes running through the deck, and then we'll do a bit of a 10-minute Q&A. So MINDCURE and myself coming into it, I have been twice named Canada's top female entrepreneur for growing and scaling businesses. I come into MINDCURE as a co-founder and CEO, and let's talk about what we do. Of course, here, as you can see, we're a full cycle of mental wellness from research to remedy. And we're a life sciences company that, like I mentioned at the outset, primarily has two divisions. One is a digital therapeutics technology platform. I'll explain what that means in a second. And then the second one, researching psychedelic compounds, so traditional drug dev and research. I'm going to take just a quick moment to orient to a couple of members on the team. We're going to run through this pretty quickly because in 10 minutes is a lot to cover. But Dr. Joel Raskin, leading as our Chief Medical Officer on the one side, spent 20 years with Eli Lilly, half of it in research for depression and the other half in Alzheimer's. Tremendously well-respected researcher and psychiatrist who also spent some time in practice, so understands what it means to develop drugs that can be deployed into market and adopted. On the digital therapeutic side, leading that, our CTO, Jeff Belair, who spent 30 years building large digital platforms in highly compliant industries like fintech and insurance. So ensuring that we have members on the team who understand data sovereignty and privacy, that kind of thing. A couple of advisors I'll highlight, Dr. Dan Engel. He's worked with us for quite some time. He's a board-certified psychiatrist and neurologist. You would have heard about him probably on the Joe Rogan show or Tim Ferriss podcast. He's been working with respect to a focus in TBI and psychedelic medicine for some time. And then Hamilton Morris and Dr. Jason Wallach, both of which we share with Compass. And Hamilton I always describe as Anthony Bourdain of psychedelics, having traveled the world, understanding psychedelic compounds and driving those somewhat de-risked by virtue of their real world experience base into the lab, and then working with us on our programs. And then finally, Dr. John Brownstein on the technology side comes out of Harvard. He's an epidemiologist who is credited with developing the technology that first identified COVID. So bringing his rich experience into how do we identify nuance in technology systems that can improve outcomes at scale. I'm going to skip over some of this psychedelic 101 stuff because most folks understand a bit about this and move directly into how MINDCURE is uniquely positioned. So like I said at the outset, we have a digital therapeutics tool and a drug development research arm. And what we wanted to focus on was this idea of how do we generate near-term revenue so we are ensuring that we're cash flow positive in the near term while also maintaining that blue sky horizon and ensuring investors have an opportunity to participate in that upside. So for us, in early days, we actually investigated the clinic model. We thought it had more asset drag than what we could do with a technology platform that could be popped up around the world as we set up environments and really riding off the back of not only psychedelic clinic growth, but the existing infrastructure of general psychiatry and psychotherapy. So really at this kind of horizon of the blue sky in the future and the scaling out of the Sas platform for near-term revenue. Let's talk really quickly about the Sas platform. When we talk about digital therapeutics, I want to put a little asterisk around this notion that there's a differentiation point between digital therapeutics and wellness apps. So wellness apps would be like your Calm app, et cetera, which are transformative in the market, but don't have the IP wrap or the moat built around them that prohibit people from coming in doing competing projects with little challenge to getting to market. So what a digital therapeutics truly is a platform that has to go through some form of regulatory process. For us, that means going through something with the FDA called SAMD approval. And you can see and read some of these valuations of these companies going through this more rigorous process. And that's what we're doing with a B2B model. What the DTX really looks like, we call it precision medicine and quantified therapy at scale. But the net benefit across it is kind of these segments. So we do onboarding and assessment toolkits. We do therapeutic protocol catalog. We have in-session assets for optimization of the psychedelic experience, a ritual suite or an integration suite, and then the large data management, all backed by AI. So what does that mean? That sounds like a lot of words and fancy things, but the net effect is for therapists, we deliver deeper data, better patient outcomes, reduce the time that they have to spend one-on-one with patients. It expands the therapist toolkit and allows them accessibility to sell more protocols. So we would offer ketamine for depression, ketamine for, say, pain management. But the KSF on this is that we allow a distribution model for protocols, meaning we get a rev line from other protocol creators and drug developers that drive that like a sales force because we're already in these clinics. A part of the other piece around the therapist is developing unique and proprietary pieces of the technology, one of which is an AI-driven music platform that's in our product. So backed by wearables and biometric monitoring, allowing a therapist to drive sentiment. So what makes you calm, maybe Beethoven, and what makes me calm, maybe Metallica. And so the music will adapt in session to drive at core sentiment, which again increases better patient outcomes. On the patient side, we're improving compliance, optimizing care, and really modernizing the patient experience in a way that we get something that we would call the quantified mind or something of that nature. So when we look at our rollout and our timeline, we start, of course, with psychedelic clinics, but move into integrated clinics. What that means is psychotherapy clinics that have some form of psychedelic component in them with a broader market appeal to the generalized psychotherapy clinic, because we know that this market for psychedelics will not grow as quickly as originally anticipated. And even though it becomes robust in size, we see a much better opportunity to scale across all of these systems. Building on this thing we call Metcalfe's Law, which is a true platform dynamics, reducing the amount of drag on the system, increasing the challenge for people to get off of the system once they've adopted us, and really scaling quickly. So we have our MVP in market now, iterating the product. We will have the commercial product for sale in Q1, Q2 of 2022, starting in America and Canada, and ultimately setting our sights over to the UK. And you can, of course, go to our website and download the deck. This is a lot to take in a short period of time. So I'm going to leave our DTX there, but a huge and very competitive piece of our offering, again, near-term revenue, as well as this idea of being first to market, which, as we know, is a compelling value add. So let's talk about our research. I'm going to tell you about two programs. One just recently announced. It's called the Desire Project. It's a bold program using MDMA-assisted psychotherapy to help women overcome a lack of sexual desire. And really quickly, when we think about this market, and the question I often get asked is this the Viagra for women? And I would say, there is no alternative really on the market for women to drive at the core sentiment of what's behind a lack of desire. 40% of women in the United States who are premenopausal self-report that they have low desire. 14% to the degree to which it has a negative impact on their mental health, and they are diagnosable with HSDD. That market is $3.18 billion in size at the moment, and forecasted to grow at a compound annual growth rate of 35% over the coming 5 years. And why is that? It is that society is more open to talking about women and their sexuality, and for women to go out and seek solutions for themselves around challenges with desire. utilizing MDMA and de-risking the program, having seen what it's been doing with PTSD. And we know that MDMA is the next, as I call it, molecule in the money. So it's the next one that we predict will be approved by the FDA. And I want to take a quick moment to talk about our team, because when you're looking at any investment, I think the people that drive it are the most important part. It's not just about having an idea, it's about who delivers results. On our team, Dr. Jennifer Mitchell, who is a principal investigator on the MAPS phase 3 study with PTSD and MDMA. In my opinion, the most well-respected MDMA researcher on the planet, has joined and has been working with us for the past number of months. Dr. Anita Clayton and Dr. Cindy Messner are the two most well-cited researchers on female sexual desire on the planet, one of which designed the actual diagnostic tool to identify lack of desire. And Ibogaine. Ibogaine is a psychoactive substance that is coming out of Africa. And what we've done with Ibogaine is looking at the market and identifying the opportunity to be the first to fully chemically synthesize Ibogaine in the lab, meaning no more partial synthesis, no more reliance on the root at all. We have a synthetic drug that we're advancing. We did 2 synthesis routes that proved to be effective, which was not the easiest thing to do, but we accomplished it. Wrapped some IP around that with provisionals that we're advancing. And now we're in the full scale up of providing animal model drug and then next human model drug for people to advance their research. And our own research into Ibogaine looking at TBI. So again, a research summary using MDMA-assisted psychotherapy to help women overcome a lack of sexual desire. Manufacturing pharmaceutical grade Ibogaine and preclinical research for psychedelic compounds with TBI and some that may involve mood. Dropping into some of the catalysts going forward, a very important part, the commercial product, again, of the technology, going first to market, being in Q1 and Q2, scaling out across the States and Canada. Our MVP partners are already across 5 states and in 2 provinces. And scaling up our research, scheduling that pre-IND meeting with the FDA on our MDMA program, the ketamine enhanced protocol advancement in the digital therapeutics. So again, developing more protocols there, looking at our pre-sub meeting for the technology product, and an update on a new molecular entity that we've been working on in the background. I'm not going to belabor this point. Again, you can go to the website and download the deck to get all of the key and important pieces. But why invest now is this idea of proprietary digital therapeutics, being first to market and really taking up space, designing a world-class product that has IP wrap. We're not just another app. A clear path to near-term revenue, the world-class scientific discovery team, and the differentiation of our psychedelic compound research. So with that, I will stop my share and join in for a little bit of Q&A. Hi, Victoria.
Hey, Kelsey, that was great. Thanks so much for sharing all of it with us. And you touched on a lot, and we've got a lot to unpack. We don't have very much time, so I'll work to unpack as much of it as I can in these few minutes that we have. But to kick it off in the tech theme of this event, I'd love to start by digging a little deeper into iStream. So you outlined in the presentation the opportunity in digital therapeutics broadly, but I'm wondering where iStream is concerned, what sets it apart from other digital therapeutic platforms in the space?
Perfect. So people might have heard of Maya, which is a private company who is offering digital therapeutics with a different kind of segment focus, really looking at the group settings and those kind of things, more historical type of practices. Then there's folks like Osmind, who are much more of an EMR focus, so focused on how do we transact through the paperwork of psychedelic therapy. And where we sit is really at this place of providing an end-to-end platform for psychedelic therapists, because we know not only are there lots of folks doing ketamine therapy today, but there are a tremendous number, if not a much larger field, of people who are being trained on MDMA therapy,
Sure.
who are scaling out ketamine clinics. And we wanted to provide both, an accessibility and a way for those people to easily adopt psychedelic therapy, and a way to collect data en masse that helps us unlock insurance payment for those clinicians and practitioners, as well as a lot of the patients are psychedelic naive. So they're coming into this wanting to know, what's my path? How does it work? Give me lots of prep in advance. Let me see the data on how I'm performing.
Right.
And what we know about psychedelic medicine and therapy is that most of the best data is captured when people leave the building.
Sure.
And so for us to biometrically monitor those patients and create this consistent flow back to therapists, reducing the time that they have to spend one-on-one. Again, everyone in psychedelic medicine knows this idea of like, how do we scale?
Yeah.
Is a big problem. And so we're tackling that head on. So what sets us apart, I think, is really, from an investor, having that another revenue line item being the distribution network, kind of like the Netflix of psychedelic medicine, and that we own the content or license the content. And so we can partner with everyone. And that in turn drives drug sales for everyone and unlocks insurance payment, which I think is key to us generating next level of value.
Cool. Now, I've noticed in your presentation, when we talk about scale, you mentioned scaling. I noticed that you use this term for iStream, where it's at right now, minimum viable product stage. Can you tell me what that means and when you're planning on releasing a commercial version?
Sure. So minimum viable product means we have the product built, but before we go to market, because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, we want to make sure it's level best. So we decided to do what we call a closed beta. So inviting 10 clinics to be a part of the first launch of the MVP. And then we iterate on the product and take off all the, buff up the rough edges and make it commercially viable. So that commercial distribution starts Q1, Q2 of 2022. And that's the full scale out, which we're already selling into with a bit of lead time so that we can start at full capacity.
Great. And now you touched on the Desire project in your presentation, and it caught my attention. I know it probably has, some of our viewers' attention, but I'm interested to know how the project came about, and if you could dive into this a little bit, because I believe it's such an important tool in our psychedelic tool chest. Why MDMA-assisted psychotherapy as a solution to this problem?
I think there's just two things to talk about here. One is this idea of strategically de-risking programs. So what is it that we know kind of works out in the world? And MDMA for a long time has been called the love drug. It's not called the sex drug, but the love drug. So this idea of unlocking our own capacity for empathy of self and connection to other. And when we look at that, and then we overlay that with what segments of the market are totally unaddressed.
Sure.
And MINDCURE is in the unique position through its leadership to be able to advance a program like this. And looking at women and sexuality, it's a tremendously large, not addressed market.
Sure.
Totally ready for a drug to come along and help it. Again, 3.18 billion is sizable. 35% annual growth is sizable. When we just kind of overlaid that, it seemed like a natural, of course. And that MDMA is next to market. So that's really important to me for investors to consider. How do we get into the money? How do we get to places where we can actually see revenue on some of this drug dev? So, MDMA to me seemed like a winner. It's a de-risk program, huge market, and next to money just made good sense.
100%. So now looking at Ibogaine, which MINDCURE is also working, within in a very significant way. It's a lot different from MDMA in its application. So I'm curious about what you see the role of Ibogaine as in the future of psychedelic medicine, and where the opportunity is for MINDCURE to work with it.
Sure. So I mentioned most of the things about Ibogaine in the presentation, but I think the one thing that's important for investors to look at is who else is doing Ibogaine. So there's MindMed, MINDCURE, Atai, and those are the major three Ibogaine programs. And for us, being the drug supplier and developing partnerships with people who are investigating Ibogaine means a tremendous upside for us at the size and scale that we're at. So that's why Ibogaine.
Cool. And so finally, we have a few seconds left, but we have to give a shout out to the markets. MINDCURE is publicly traded and has recently graduated to the OTCQX. What does this mean for the company?
It means a lot more visibility and tradability on the retail side in the States. So that's obviously important for us, and just starts to track investors' eyes to where we're heading and what kind of markets we might want to be listed on in the future.
Perfect. Great. Well, this has been really enlightening for us. Thank you for your time, Kelsey.
Thanks, Victoria.
You're welcome.